The story begins in 1944 on a remote island somewhere in the South Pacific. During World War II, an American and a Japanese fighter plane crash onto the island after an intense dogfight. The American soldier, Hank, immediately starts firing at the Japanese pilot, Gunpei, but Gunpei survives and pulls out his katana before charging straight at Hank. The two soldiers begin brutally fighting each other in the middle of the jungle, but suddenly, something massive appears behind them. It's Kong. Then the movie jumps to 1973, during the Vietnam War, where huge protests are happening as people demand an end to the war. At the same time, a man named Randa arrives to meet a senator alongside his assistant Brooks. Randa shows the senator a satellite image of a mysterious island hidden deep in the South Pacific, an island that doesn't exist on any world map. According to ancient legends, the place is called Skull Island. Randa explains that every ship and plane that ever passed near the island disappeared without a trace. He says the place is far more dangerous than the Bermuda Triangle. Then he reveals something even more disturbing. The nuclear tests back in 1954 were never just tests. They were attempts to kill something. Randa believes there are creatures in this world far beyond human understanding, and whatever those creatures are, they're hiding on Skull Island. The senator thinks Randa is telling some kind of children's fantasy story and starts leaving, but Brooks quickly stops him and explains that a mission is already being sent to the island. He says they could discover medicine, oil, new fuel sources, and many other valuable resources there. Brooks also reveals that a Russian satellite will pass over the island the very next night, and within 3 days, Russia could have pictures of whatever is hiding there. So if there really is something on that island, shouldn't America find it first? After hearing that, the senator finally approves the mission. Randa also requests a military escort for the expedition. Soon after, we see soldiers at an airbase in Vietnam preparing to finally return home after the war. Most of them are about retirement, except for Colonel Packard. Unlike the others, Packard doesn't seem happy at all. Then he receives a call from a general asking if he's willing to lead one last mission. Packard immediately agrees, almost excited by the opportunity. The general explains that scientists have discovered a new island through satellite scans, and they need helicopters and soldiers to help survey the area. Packard confidently says they'll handle it. Meanwhile, Randa and Brooks arrive in Saigon, searching for a tracker named Conrad. Brooks asks Randa why he specifically wants Conrad for the mission. Randa explains that Conrad used to be a captain in the British Air Service and doesn't work for any government agency. Back in 1972, he managed to rescue 12 missing soldiers completely on his own. According to Randa, Conrad is exactly the kind of man they need. Randa offers him a large amount of money. Conrad then asks, "So who exactly am I supposed to find out there?" Brooks tells him the truth. All they have are a few pictures of the island, and nothing more. They're scientists, not explorers. That's why they need someone experienced like him. Conrad eventually agrees to join the mission. Then we're introduced to Mason Weaver, a photographer. She receives a call from Jerry, who tells her to arrive in Bangkok, Thailand, by the next evening, because that's where the ship heading to Skull Island will depart from. Soon, Packard's soldiers also arrive in Bangkok. Weaver joins the team as well, and together they finally set sail for Skull Island. The mission supervisor introduces everyone and explains the plan. He says violent storms surround the island at all times, which is why Skull Island remained hidden from the world for so long. But now, they're about to become the first people ever to set foot there. Their main objective is to discover what lies beneath the island's surface. Brooks explains that first they'll drop explosive charges across the island. The blasts will create vibrations in the ground, allowing them to map the underground terrain. Then, while flying over the southern coastline, they'll deploy seismic instruments to measure the island's density. The supervisor explains that after landing, they'll establish a base camp while Conrad leads the exploration team deeper into the island. Then Army Commander Jack gives everyone an important warning. The moment they reach Skull Island, all communication with the ship will be lost. 3 days later, a refueling team will arrive on the north side of the island, and that will be their only chance to escape. So no matter what happens, they cannot miss that pickup. Eventually, the team gets close to the island, but surrounding Skull Island is a massive and terrifying storm. Seeing the danger, the supervisor suggests delaying the mission, but Randa refuses to back down. Instead, he looks at Packard and asks, "Can you get us through that storm?" Packard confidently orders everyone into the helicopters, and the squad heads straight toward the island. The moment they enter the storm, the helicopters begin losing stability. Their RPM levels go completely out of control, and the pilots struggle to keep the aircraft steady. But somehow, after fighting through the violent storm, they finally make it across and reach Skull Island. The The supervisor and his team land on the island and begin setting up their equipment to collect readings. Meanwhile, Colonel Packard and his squad start dropping explosives across the island from the helicopters. As Brooks studies the data, he suddenly realizes something strange. The ground beneath the island is hollow, but before he can say anything else, disaster strikes. Out of nowhere, Kong smashes one of the helicopters out of the sky using a giant tree trunk. The helicopter crashes and explodes instantly. Then Kong grabs another helicopter with one hand and tears it apart mid-air, killing the soldiers inside. Packard quickly radios the team, warning everyone that multiple helicopters have gone down. At that moment, the entire squad finally sees Kong clearly for the first time, and they're completely stunned. Kong is so massive that the helicopters look tiny compared to him. Packard immediately orders all commandos to open fire. The soldiers start shooting at Kong from every direction, but instead of stopping him, it only makes him furious. Kong begins attacking every helicopter in sight, smashing them one after another. Within moments, the entire squad is wiped out of the sky. Many soldiers are killed during the crash, and the survivors end up scattered all across the island. Conrad watches Kong through his binoculars as the giant ape slowly disappears back into the jungle. Then Conrad tells the survivors that all the helicopters are destroyed, and they're stranded on the south side of the island. He explains that there's a river nearby, and if they follow it north, it should eventually lead them back to their extraction point. But they only have 3 days to get there. Then the movie cuts back to Packard, who's desperately trying to contact his remaining soldiers through the radio. Chapman finally responds and shares his location. He also tells Packard that he still has a large supply of weapons and explosives with him. Hearing that, Packard says they're coming to meet him because now he wants to kill Kong. Packard orders Chapman to gather any surviving commandos he can find, but moments later, their communication suddenly cuts off. As Packard and Riles continue moving through the jungle, they reunite with a few more surviving soldiers near a river. Mills informs Packard that 7 commandos are dead and only 7 survived. Packard is devastated after hearing this. Filled with anger, he marches straight toward Randa, points a gun at him, and demands answers about Kong. Randa calmly tells him that monsters are real. For years, nobody believed him, but now they will. Packard realizes the truth. The seismic survey was never the real mission. The bombs were dropped to force Kong out into the open. Then Randa finally reveals his past. Years ago, he was traveling on a ship carrying nearly 1,000 people, but when the ship passed near this island, Kong attacked and sank it. Out of all those people, Randa was the only survivor. Everyone else was told the ship sank during the war, but Randa knows the truth. A monster destroyed it. For the last 30 years, he's been trying to prove that monsters really exist. Long before humans ruled the earth, creatures like Kong did. Meanwhile, Conrad and the others continue traveling along the river. Suddenly, the water starts moving violently. A gigantic buffalo-like creature slowly rises out of the river. Everyone freezes in shock. Slivko immediately points his gun at it, but Conrad stops him from shooting. The creature peacefully walks away back into the jungle. At the same time, Packard and his surviving soldiers are overwhelmed with grief over losing their men. Because of that, they swear revenge against Kong. Then they continue deeper into the island, searching for Chapman and the remaining weapons. As they move through a forest filled with giant bamboo trees, one of the soldiers bends down to drink water. Suddenly, a massive spider attacks him, stabbing one of its long legs straight through his mouth and killing him instantly. The soldiers immediately start firing at the creature. At the same time, the spider wraps its tongue around Mills and begins dragging him upward. Cole quickly orders everyone to target the spider's legs. The soldiers blast its legs apart and finally kill the monster, barely saving Mills' life. Meanwhile, Conrad and his group arrive at a mysterious area filled with ancient stone structures. Weaver starts taking pictures of the strange place. But then, she suddenly notices a man standing in the distance through her camera lens. The sight terrifies her. Moments later, dozens of tribal villagers appear and completely surround the group. Then an older man walks forward. It's Hank. He tells them that he's been waiting for 28 years, hoping one day he could finally return home. Weaver asks him how he ended up on the island. The man introduces himself as Hank Marlowe, an American Air Force pilot. He explains that his plane crashed on the island 28 years ago. Then Marlowe leads the group back to his village. Meanwhile, Chapman is shown alone near a river drinking water. Suddenly, Kong appears nearby. Terrified, Chapman quickly hides behind a large rock. Kong calmly kneels beside the river and starts drinking water. But then something huge moves beneath the surface. A gigantic octopus-like creature attacks Kong from the water. Without hesitation, Kong grabs the creature, kills it with brute force, and starts eating it. Watching all of this from hiding, Chapman is completely shocked. Then the movie shows Hank leading Conrad and the others into the tribe's village. Weaver notices the massive wall surrounding the settlement and asks if it was built to protect the people from Kong. But Hank explains that the villagers aren't afraid of Kong at all. Then he takes everyone inside an old ship and finally reveals the truth about the island. For thousands of years, the people of Skull Island feared Kong, but eventually, Kong started protecting them from terrifying underground creatures called skull crawlers. That's why the villagers now worship Kong like a god. According to Hank, Kong is the king of the island. Then he explains what the skull crawlers really are: massive reptile-like monsters, incredibly violent and deadly. Hank says the bomb explosions woke them up underground, which is why Kong became so aggressive earlier. He explains that Kong can handle the smaller skull crawlers, but if the bigger ones awaken, everyone on the island will be in serious trouble. Then Hank reveals something even sadder. The giant skull crawlers killed Kong's entire family long ago. Kong is the last of his kind, and he's still growing. After hearing all this, Conrad explains that a refueling team will arrive on the north side of the island in 3 days, and they need to reach it before then. Hank tells them there's no way they'll make it on foot. Then he shows them a boat he's been secretly building for years. Hank explains that he and Gunpei were working together to repair the boat so they could finally escape the island one day. But before they could finish it, a skull crawler killed Gunpei. So everyone starts helping Hank repair the boat in hopes of escaping Skull Island together. Meanwhile, Weaver walks around the village taking photographs of the tribe. Suddenly, she hears a strange sound nearby. When she follows it, she discovers that the giant buffalo creature is trapped beneath a crashed helicopter. Weaver tries to move the wreckage herself, but can't do it. Then suddenly, Kong appears behind her. Seeing Kong this close terrifies her, but instead of attacking, Kong calmly lifts the helicopter off the creature and sets it free. The buffalo slowly walks away, and Kong quietly leaves as well. For the first time, Weaver realizes Kong may not actually be the monster everyone thinks he is. Meanwhile, Chapman is resting alone on what looks like a giant fallen tree trunk. But suddenly, the tree starts moving. Chapman falls to the ground in shock. The creature turns out to be a massive insect-like monster, camouflaged as a tree. Terrified, Chapman starts shooting at it. But before the creature can attack him, it suddenly notices a skull crawler nearby and flees in fear. A moment later, the skull crawler attacks Chapman and devours him alive. Then the movie cuts to the next day. Hank brings the group to Gunpei's grave and tells them that this is where they finally stopped being enemies and became friends. Afterward, everyone finishes repairing the boat and begins traveling across the island to reach the extraction point. During the journey, Hank shows the group a picture of his wife. He explains that right before his plane crashed, he received a telegram saying he had become a father. Then suddenly, Slivko's radio reconnects with Colonel Packard. Slivko tells him they're traveling by boat. Mills asks where they even found a boat, and Slivko quickly explains everything about Hank Marlowe. Then they tell Packard to fire a flare so they can locate each other. Packard launches a flare into the sky, and Conrad's group immediately spots it. But at that exact moment, a giant bird-like creature swoops down and grabs the mission supervisor, carrying him high into the air before killing him. Soon after, Conrad and the others finally reach the shore and reunite with Packard and the surviving soldiers. Everyone is relieved to see each other alive. Conrad explains that they can use the boat to reach the refueling ship, but Packard refuses to leave immediately. He says they first need to find a missing commando whose helicopter crashed somewhere in the west. Hank instantly warns them not to go there because that region is where the skull crawlers live, but Packard orders Conrad to lead the search anyway. Conrad reluctantly agrees and says that if they don't find the soldier before nightfall, everyone will turn back. The group heads deeper into the island, searching for the missing commando. Eventually, they come across enormous skeletons. Hank reveals that the remains belong to Kong's parents, who were killed by the giant skull crawlers years ago. Packard says Chapman's helicopter crashed on the other side of the skeletons. Hank warns them not to go any farther, but Packard refuses to leave without Chapman, so the group carefully moves through the massive bones toward the other side. At one point, Cole lights a cigarette. Mills immediately tells him to put it out, so Cole tosses it onto the ground. But the entire area is covered in leaking fuel. The moment the cigarette lands, a huge explosion erupts. The blast instantly attracts a skull crawler. Terrified, everyone hides between the giant skeletons as the monster approaches. The skull crawler suddenly vomits onto the ground, and from its stomach rolls out a human skull wearing Chapman's dog tags. Realizing Chapman is dead, the group quietly immediately begins backing away, but Randa accidentally falls behind. Before anyone can save him, the Skullcrawler devours him alive. The soldiers immediately open fire on the creature, but in the chaos, the Skullcrawler attacks again and kills another commando. Then Packard orders one of the commandos to attack the Skullcrawler with fire, but the monster instantly smashes the soldier away with its massive tail. Since the entire area is covered in fuel, a gigantic explosion erupts all around them. The blast knocks Slivko unconscious, and the gas bombs he's carrying explode as well. The explosions attract huge bird-like creatures that suddenly swarm the area and begin attacking the soldiers. Conrad rushes in to save Slivko, but at that moment, the Skullcrawler starts charging straight toward them. Just before it reaches them, Weaver suddenly steps forward and throws a lighter in front of the creature. The fuel instantly ignites, surrounding the Skullcrawler in flames. The monster burns alive and finally dies. After everything settles down, Hank tries once again to convince Packard to leave the island while they still can, but Packard refuses. Then Conrad shows him Chapman's dog tags and tells him the truth. Chapman is already dead. Even after hearing that, Packard still refuses to leave. He says he's going to Chapman's crashed helicopter anyway, because there are enough weapons there to kill Kong. Conrad reminds him that Kong didn't kill Chapman, but Packard angrily replies that Kong killed everyone else. Then Hank warns Packard that killing Kong would be a terrible mistake, because Kong is the only thing keeping the Skullcrawlers trapped underground. But Packard refuses to listen. Then Conrad finally makes a deal with him. He tells Packard that the weapons are about 3 kilometers away, and while Packard retrieves them, Conrad will take everyone else back to the boat and wait there. Packard leaves with his soldiers to collect the weapons. Meanwhile, Conrad and the others head back toward the boat. Conrad tells the group to stay there while he climbs higher to scout the river from above. Weaver decides to go with him. At the same time, Packard and his team finally reach Chapman's crashed helicopter. The soldiers gather every weapon and explosive they can carry because Packard is fully determined to kill Kong. Then Packard secretly pours fuel barrels into the river and positions his men around the area like a trap. Meanwhile, Conrad and Weaver reach the top of a mountain overlooking the island. As they stand there watching the boat below, Kong suddenly appears right in front of them. Weaver slowly reaches out and touches Kong's hand. Surprisingly, Kong doesn't attack either of them, but then explosions suddenly echo through the jungle. Packard has started detonating bombs to lure Kong in. The explosions make Kong furious, and he immediately charges toward Packard's location. Back near the boat, Conrad tells the others to leave by morning if he and Weaver don't return. Hank asks him where he's going. Conrad simply replies, to help Kong. Hank decides to go with them. Meanwhile, Kong storms into the river to attack Packard. But the moment Kong enters the water, Packard throws a burning torch into the river. Because of the fuel spread across the water earlier, the entire river bursts into flames. Kong is badly burned and collapses unconscious into the water. Packard quickly surrounds Kong with explosives, preparing to finish him off. Just then, Conrad arrives and tries to stop him, but Packard refuses to back down. Even Slivko finally turns against Packard after realizing how far he's gone. But before anyone can do anything, something massive rises out of the river, a gigantic skullcrawler. Hank immediately recognizes it. This is the biggest skullcrawler on the entire island. Conrad orders everyone to run for their lives and escape the area. Most of them flee immediately, but Packard stays behind, still obsessed with killing Kong. Suddenly, Kong regains consciousness. Without hesitation, Kong crushes Packard to death with his hand. Moments later, the giant skullcrawler attacks Kong and brutally injures him. Meanwhile, Conrad and the others reach the edge of the island. Conrad sends Weaver up the mountain to fire a flare so the rescue team can locate them. As the survivors continue moving toward the shore, the giant skullcrawler suddenly appears again. Cole decides to sacrifice himself to save the others. Holding explosives in his hands, he walks directly toward the monster. But before he can detonate them properly, the skullcrawler smashes him away with its tail. The explosives blow up instantly, killing Cole. Then the skullcrawler turns toward Conrad and prepares to devour him. But suddenly, Kong appears and attacks the monster. An enormous battle begins between the two titans. At the same time, Weaver successfully fires the flare from the mountain. Seeing the signal, Brooks quickly arrives with the boat to rescue everyone. Meanwhile, the giant skullcrawler grabs Kong and throws him onto the wreckage of an old ship. The impact traps Kong inside massive chains, leaving him unable to escape. The skullcrawler moves in to finish Kong off, but Brooks starts firing at the creature with the boat's machine gun, distracting it long enough to help Kong. Unfortunately, the gun jams. The Skullcrawler immediately turns and charges toward the boat. At that exact moment, Weaver fires a flare gun directly at the monster, injuring it. Kong finally breaks free from the chains and grabs a giant ship propeller. Using it like a weapon, he violently attacks the Skullcrawler and throws the creature toward a nearby cliff. But Weaver is standing on top of that cliff. Ooh. The impact shakes the entire mountain, causing Weaver to fall into the river unconscious. Meanwhile, Kong brutally beats the Skullcrawler with the giant propeller until the monster is temporarily knocked out. Then Kong quickly dives into the river and pulls Weaver out of the water. But suddenly, the Skullcrawler wakes up again and launches another attack. The creature tries to eat Weaver and bites down onto Kong's arm. In the final moments of the fight, Kong grabs the Skullcrawler's tongue and rips out its entire tongue and internal organs, killing the monster once and for all. After defeating the Skullcrawler, Kong quietly leaves Weaver beside the shore and walks away into the jungle. Weaver finally regains consciousness, and soon after, the survivors successfully escape Skull Island. Then the movie shows Hank Marlowe finally reuniting with his wife and son after 28 long years. He's overwhelmed with happiness, seeing his family again. In the movie's end credits scene, Conrad and Weaver are shown inside an interrogation room. Then Brooks enters and reveals that Skull Island was only the beginning. Kong isn't the only king out there. Brooks shows them secret files and images of gigantic monsters like Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah. Seeing the photos leaves Conrad and Weaver completely shocked. And with that, the movie comes to an end.